Hello and welcome to the Unknown Comics Gaming Podcast, name TBD. I'm your host, Brandon, with my co-hosts, Chris and Tanner. Everybody say hi.
Hello.
So,
And we don't have a lot to go over, a lot of different things to go over today, but we have one really big one. So if you are a 40K player, this week was pretty huge. So I'll let these two guys kind of take the brunt of it, and I'll jump in whenever possible. But this week, Games Workshop dropped their, I guess they're doing it biannually. Is that their plan to do an FAQ?
They said they probably won't be anything else for another 6 months, or at least the summer.
Yeah.
So it kind of seems that way.
That's the schedule that they've done for Blood Bowl and stuff like that. And I
it's-
think that's how they're spacing out FAQs and stuff.
It's like they have a big release. They give it 6 months, and then they fix everything that's wrong with it.
Yeah.
And
clear up things.
And that's smart
things like
to give the game a little bit of time to bake to see how the meta actually, because if you knee-jerk reaction to everything, then you're always just playing catch-up to yourself, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Let stuff kind of play out and see how people adjust to it, and then determine, which, and FAQ is one thing, and then, just changing the rules another too.
Well, and you've always got people that are going to start abusing something. They find something that is just OP, overpower.
Yeah.
And so they want to always keep bringing balance.
Right.
to
Right.
the game
Well,
as
because and we didn't have much of a competitive scene the past year, but there's always that one army that you are
Yeah.
gonna see because there's
Well,
that one guy that just wants to win and nothing else.
And if you're going to have a long game, a game that has a long lifespan, even if you do get it completely dialed in and balanced, which I don't think you can ever do, you have to shift the meta around. You have to change it up.
Right.
One, it's going to force people, or it's not going to force people. It's going to make people want to buy into other factions, which means more model
Well,
sales.
And also some of the FAQs, they clearly state we're changing it so that you can take some of those models you
Yeah.
want to take.
Exactly.
Right.
You
Well,
know?
and at the end of the day, they're a miniature company, not a game company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. The rule set is the vehicle in which, you utilize their miniatures. Some people just buy them, paint them, and own them. They don't play the game.
Yeah, it's all hobby.
Exactly. So we've got the FAQ here. So we won't. I'm not going to bring up a bunch of stuff on screen. They're going to be talking about it more, but for those who maybe eventually listen to an audio version, if one ever ends up existing,
It's a 40K wide FAQ, although a lot of stuff didn't really get much.
Well, and we're still pretty early in 9th edition. There's
Yeah.
not very many armies that have 9th edition rules yet.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
With only four codexes. So
five. Well, I guess if you're counting supplements, because didn't we get 2 the first month, 2 the second month, and then Blood
So
Angels
here's the Blood Angels Codex
Yeah.
supplement errata.
yeah, and there's not much change there. Just a couple of answers on some special rules for characters and things like that.
I lost
The Space Marines and the core rulebook, and then your 2020. What is it?
I lost the rule book. It was here earlier.
The
There it is.
2020 mission pack and stuff like that, which is match play, things like that.
Yeah.
We were kind of talking about this before the show. So
as a Death Guard player, we didn't get anything.
Yeah.
I think they're probably holding out for the new Codex for that before they change a whole bunch of stuff.
yeah, which makes sense. We know based on comments I've seen on Instagram from GW, and apparently in one of their FAQ or their not FAQs, in one of their posts, they've been saying that they're going to be releasing a codex every month for sure. That's the plan. So we don't know which one's going to be this month.
All I know is Dark Eldar comes out before Death Guard, I'm going to throw something.
Probably going to throw a couple somethings. So but I know for sure there's not any releases the next couple of weeks. So, but hopefully by the end of January we have some new codex coming. We know we have new Slaanesh stuff coming out in February for
Age
Sigmar.
Sigmar.
So
Which, a lot of times with the factions that kind of cross both games, if we get something new in Sigmar, we're going to be getting something new Slaanesh in 40K.
yeah, that one. I mean, it makes sense for those kind of armies for sure. Because I mean, the demons are
And that's been the history of
both ways,
demons
so.
through GW for years. I mean, you would have square-based demons in 40K because that's how they came.
Yeah,
You know?
and most people didn't say anything, But now the fact that they're all, on circular bases is pretty nice. Although I don't think all of them are the same size bases.
But it doesn't matter.
It does.
Does base size matter anymore?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I think it does.
As long as you don't model for advantage.
Here's the reason. Here's the reason it does. There are a lot of rules that make you have to be wholly within a certain circumference of something. So if your base sizes are smaller, then you can get more in those sizes of circumferences.
But is that the base wholly within, or is that the model wholly within?
Everything has to be within that thing, and if you're not, they go home.
So as long as so you're saying make the base tinier than it needs to be?
Yeah, if they're,
so you
if
don't
they're
have the risk.
smaller, you can get more models in there.
Yeah.
So
Which I think the base size between the two games I think only varies if you buy the older boxes.
yeah, and I think that's probably the case. Some of
In
them
the
just haven't been
repackaged
updated
stuff,
yet.
they've been updated.
Yeah.
But if you end up with an older box, you're gonna have different bases.
So now, like if that's a model that hasn't had an update yet, then that's just the way it is. That's fine.
So what are the big sweeping FAQ clarifications and changes to the core rules?
So I think there's two that are particularly important. The first is whoever wins the roll off at the beginning of the game has to go first. You no longer get to choose first or second because that's kind of an advantage.
Okay.
As far as choosing.
So they've eliminated the choice pretty much.
Yeah,
It's
you win the
completely
roll,
random now.
you go
Okay.
first.
And you don't have to play it this way. These are mainly match play rules,
Right.
But I mean, I'm sure most people are still going to just play it that way,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah. That typically match play typically drives casual play.
Yes.
At least as a baseline, unless something is just so egregious that a local meta just says no.
If
we're
you get
not
into
doing
a
this.
tournament, that's
Yeah.
that's how it's going to be. So I mean, you might
And then
as
even
well.
some tournaments kind of deviate from
And then
the typical rules.
the other big one is kind of helps with balance the point scoring. So player one has a pretty big advantage for scoring points, just because they can get to everything sooner, start camping on objectives, and the way that it's counted, they just have a timing advantage.
Yeah.
So now player two in the very last battle round, player two now gets their points at the end of the turn instead of the beginning of the turn. So that gives them one extra turn to score points. Basically,
Okay.
it makes it to where their last turn matters.
You could think of it as in terms of like baseball. Like if you're the last person to go, you still got a chance. Kind
Right.
of a deal.
Because if you
you know.
score your points at the beginning of that turn, then why play the rest of the turn? Because you're
Right.
not going to get any points towards the
I got you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
You
it'd
know
be
the
like,
game's over.
It'd be like a walk off,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're talking about in baseball. Gotcha. Yeah.
So I think that balances the playing field between player one and player two.
They wanted to make it feel like, because a lot of times right now there are some circumstances where if you get second turn, it's an advantage just based on setup. But
Yeah.
as far as the board goes, it's really almost never an advantage.
So
Right.
what?
Well, because one of the issues I've come across, especially on a smaller battlefield, player two. So player one runs up, grabs all the objectives. It's a smaller battlefield, so things are in range faster. Player two gets a bunch of their stuff shot off the board before they've even had a chance to do anything.
Yeah.
And then you're playing catch up from then on out through the rest of the
So
game.
let me ask this: why is scoring at the end of turn universal to all turns, both players? And
So it depends. So you have primary objectives, and then you have your secondaries.
right,
Some are scored at the beginning of your turn. Some are scored at the end of your turn.
right.
yeah, and some of them are scored at the beginning of the player round,
Yes.
and then your turn.
Right, and
individually.
I get that. You know, I'm looking at games like Infinity where you never score anything at the beginning of anything. It's always either at the end of the turn or the end of the round.
So the things you get at the beginning, so you wouldn't get the primaries the first turn, right? So basically, at the beginning of your turn, what you're usually getting is things you're holding from last turn.
Yeah.
So you're already controlling those, so the person can't take that from you until the beginning of the next round.
Are games still 6 turns and then
They're 5 only.
Five.
only? No potential for it to
No.
keep going.
5 is
Gotcha.
the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that was another way of making sure the games go faster.
Well, yeah. And for tournament play, you having set amount of rounds, you definitely want. If you have the 1 in 6 chance that this game's
Yeah.
going to keep going and
You know,
going
I've pulled
and
off-
going and going.
I've pulled off a couple miracles on that
Yeah.
ending dice roll.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. A lot of times, if I just had another round, yeah, Although I haven't had many games that go past. I've only played a because I'm still learning the new stuff. I've only played one game over 1,000 points, but none of my games have gone past 3.5 rounds.
Yeah, that's kind of been my experience. By turn 4, at least one person's pretty well been.
You could call it.
Yeah,
there's no
way they can come back.
Are all the match play battle plans, are they all pretty symmetrical, balanced to each side, or do they?
I think
would say
it's sometimes your army can, depending on what you roll. If you're doing it randomly,
But
sometimes
as far
your
as
army can put you in a
the rules
put it,
of the
but
battle plan,
I would say so.
I think so. Yeah.
Now there are some crusade battles that are skewed to one side or
right?
the other,
But
that's
narrative.
all about the narrative.
Yeah, that's narrative. That makes sense. Match play, you kind of have to have it symmetrical from the get go.
Yeah.
and level playing field. So those are the two big ones for the core rules. What about some of the factions? What are some of the big FAQs that came out for the different factions?
So for most of the factions, I'm not seeing too many updates yet. Most of the big thing was they did some point configuration.
Okay.
This was for Necrons and Space Marines. These are two of the newer codexes, but what they've seen is that, these guys are a little bit overpowered, so we just want to make them cost a little bit more in the game.
Yeah,
So,
I know people spammed Eradicators and the little four-wheeler thing.
yeah, the ATVs, that was a big change. That's even point cost. The Apothecary no longer can bring back the ATVs at full health,
Okay.
which is what they were able to do. So
Apothecaries.
That never made sense.
can bring back an infantry or a bike unit.
Right.
So the ATV is considered a bike, so they were able to bring it back full 8 wound ATV. So that was
Sure.
definitely being spammed. So now it's excluded from that apothecary rule.
On that note, tanks have Marine drivers. Apothecaries should be able to bring tanks back.
Yeah, well,
right?
that was another big thing, is the fact that the ATV is a bike, but it also explodes. So they were like, wait, so
it's got to be one or the other, you guys.
Yeah.
Is it a vehicle or is it a bike?
So it still is a bike. It still does explode, but it no longer
Wow.
is attached to the apothecary rule there. And then, of course, like I said, your Eradicators, your Inceptors, and your Outriders all went up 5 points a model.
Okay.
I think
which
that
isn't a lot.
It's not a lot, but it makes a difference because
It does, because the army I just played 2 days ago is no longer legal.
when you're playing someone that's taken two units of Eradicators and they've got 6 multi-meltas coming at your face,
Yeah.
that's not fun.
It takes a lot of shots away with them getting 2 shots each when they're shooting at the same target.
Right.
That's a big deal. I mean, I took down.
I mean, if you know you're going up
really quickly.
If you know you're
and I
going up
wouldn't have
against
been able to do that.
Eradicators, don't bring any armor. I
Yeah.
mean, because there's no point. They're just going to die horribly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then Outriders. Of course, you can only take a squad of 3 Outriders anyway. So 15 points more for that squad doesn't seem like a really big deal. If you were taking a full-fledged Outrider squad at 6 models, I mean, that can get pricey.
And that's kind of the sweet spot for when you're going around changing points. Make it to where it's not a big deal, but now you have to start making choices when you're building your army.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Necron, the reanimator for Necrons, of course, it's a cool idea, cool model. It gives you +1 to reanimation protocols, but it was like 110, 100. It was a waste of points. So they've made it. I think it's 80 points now. So they dropped that significantly to see if more people wanted to, put that in their army list and things like that.
Right.
So because it doesn't do a whole lot as far as shooting and stuff goes. It's just there for that extra buff.
Yeah.
I think it's a 6-inch aura. I think, I'm not quite sure. I think that's a good thing for that as well. So, but didn't see a whole lot of other stuff besides that. Some Blood Angel stuff we already knew, like the fact that Sanguiners, he can't drop in on first turn, which
Yeah.
I don't know. Still feel like he should be able to. It's a cool special rule. He should be able to use it whenever he wants. But, whatever.
Well, and then do you pay for it, right? I mean, does the restriction of the ability now make his point cost outrageous?
No, I mean, because everybody already kind of figured he's in reserves, so the reserves don't come until turn 2 or more.
Right.
But it didn't clearly state that in his rules, so people were saying, well, maybe he could do that. Because basically, if he's on the board turn 1, he can just heroically intervene anywhere on the board.
Yeah.
And go be in combat. But if he's off the board, he can't do that until turn 2 or later. But he could still just show up in combat and heroically intervene, which is pretty freaking awesome. I mean, he's not the best character as far as fighting and stuff goes, but he could step in and hold his own for a minute if he needed to.
Yeah.
So,
well, cool.
That's the gist of it. I know none of my armies got any big changes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really waiting on codexes for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and we'll see. We know we still have Dark Eldar, the Chikari, Dark Angels, and of course the Death Guard, all coming up. So we'll see when those come out and how quickly we'll be able to start playing those guys, and then hopefully we'll have new releases on what's up next.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've actually got new releases.
Yeah.
I mean, they've previewed a bunch of stuff, but we're waiting for pre-order dates, you know?
Yeah. So coming out February, another one of our favorite games, Infinity Sci-Fi, or just I think just call it Infinity now. I think they kind of dropped the Sci-Fi.
I don't know that they've ever said that. They've always called it Infinity the game.
Yeah, Infinity the game.
To differentiate it from
So-
like the video games and stuff like that. But,
So of course from Corvus Valley, this coming out. They got some new stuff coming out next month. So
yeah, so this is one of the ones coming out. It's for the Nomads. These are the cheer killers,
love me some space pirates.
and that's not a very big. Hold on, let's see what I can do here. Shabam.
Ooh, those are
Look at
nice.
that.
Are those like
they're-
Catholic schoolgirl things going on here?
They're cheer killers. They're cheerleaders.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
I,
yeah,
I love their models and what they do with them. Man, they're just so cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Their sculptors are got to be back there just being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have fun with this one.
right. So there's that, and let's see here.
Hold on, Brandon's learning how to use his keyboard.
I'll put it in full screen. That was my fault. Let's see here. They've also got. So they also released. We'll just leave it up. So for those listening, so they also released John Hawkwood. So he's the leader of the White Company, north of the NA2, non-aligned army. So one of the mercenary companies, which for those have been out of Infinity for a while. There used to be just the big factions, and then you had the sectorial armies inside of each faction, which basically sometimes were mostly that faction's units, but could borrow from others. Then a few years ago, they started doing the non-aligned armies, basically the mercenary companies, and so they're basically sectorials in of themselves that don't have like a parent sectorial, that are really just hodgepodges of a bunch of different models and stuff like that. So the White Company has a lot of models from Yuching and Pan-Oceania. And then, of course, their leader is John Hawkwood, which he's actually based on a real-world person from the 1600s. He actually, or it was late medieval times that he actually had a mercenary company called the White Company.
So they've done that with quite a few characters. They pulled out of history.
Yeah. Gutierrez pulls a lot of characters. So in Infinity, you have characters that are called recreations. He's not one of them. He's just coincidentally named and stuff like that. But William Wallace and Joan of Arc and
Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu and Saladin. They're all what are called recreations that Aleph basically created using basically AI and recovered genetic material. I don't know how they would have gotten recovered genetic material from these people, but cool.
Jurassic Park, bro.
Exactly.
They were all frozen in sap.
Mosquitoes.
From that Earth that they're no longer around.
And so they create these legendary characters that so like they created William Wallace Aleph created William Wallace to try to kind of get Ariadne on board with the greater whole, technology wise and stuff like that, because he would kind of lead the Scots on Ariadne to kind of rally behind him and join, and then he kind of ends up just going off the rails and being like, no, I'm staying in Ariadne. I'm Scottish. Let's do this.
What would you expect? From
Exactly. Yeah, he's
We want our freedom.
So John Hawkwood is one of those historical characters. Stat wise, he's okay. I'm not like gaga about him, but he does have a pretty decent model. Probably not my favorite in the whole line. And then they posted their kind of loose roadmap for what 2021 looks like, and a lot of it is just kind of reviewing
2020.
2020, because they just dropped Defiance. We mentioned that last week. But a lot of it is just is kind of fleshing out a lot of the Code 1 armies, and then continuing, because the 4 Code 1 armies, Pano, Yuching, combined and O12 are constantly getting like their booster packs and action packs and stuff like that. They released a Hawk Islam action pack, so they're doing. Corvus Belli's big thing is getting away from a lot of individual SKUs, right? Blister packs of models. They don't have blister packs anymore. I don't think. I haven't seen a blister pack in a very long time from them. So they're all in these small to large boxes. So army boxes being the biggest. Then you have action packs, and then you have booster packs, and then just the model boxes, right?
Yeah.
Characters,
2 or 3 models.
Characters and stuff may still be in blisters. Now that I think about it,
There are. That's what I was gonna say. I think the only thing I've seen are specific models.
Yeah. But generally, like the cheer killers, they'll be in a box of 4 or whatever. So
which I think is good overall. That's easier to work with.
It's easier for a store, definitely, when you don't have to carry as many SKUs, and especially when Infinity's model range is so huge.
I think at first it was harder to do that because they held all the different weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be my only concern is like.
But now they've kind of streamlined that.
If they can make it somewhat multi-part to where you can choose your weapons.
I don't think they're going to do that. I think they are so focused on how the model looks.
Yeah.
That you have to be really good at modding and kit bashing to get it. But
because that's the only thing that sucks about that is when you have to buy 4 boxes to get
I will
right
say that
loadout.
the Infinity Corvus Belli and the Infinity community is not super huge on WYSIWYG.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're okay to proxy stuff.
Well, and you only have to keep track of 15 or less models when you're playing a game. So it shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, it's definitely not your big 40K or
where you're like,
fantasy
wait, I
battle.
thought you said
Right.
that guy didn't have that. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Yeah. I
Yeah,
shouldn't have
and
been
generally,
choosing that.
and part of it is, if I go to a tournament, I'm printing off a courtesy list for you as well.
Right.
Right. So what everybody that's public information has.
Right.
As opposed to 40K where that's not really a thing where you give them your army list.
Well, I mean,
but I think at the beginning, any game I've played of 40K and anyone I've seen, everybody goes over what they have.
Yeah.
I do that, and this person, he's got this trait and this weapon and all that stuff.
Because there are some things you do need to for sure let people know.
I like the idea of a courtesy list because, especially when you have a game that has a lot of special rules, even if I go over everything at the beginning of the game, what are the odds that you're going to remember it for the entire game? You're going to ask me again. Now, what does that guy do? If I have a list in front of me and I can be like, oh, the Masai Moran, has crazy koalas, has this, and yada, yada, yada.
I would think the main reason that's not super popular in 40K is because the lists are so much longer. Takes more effort.
You can do it condensed.
But most people they don't make a physical list. They're just reading out of their codex.
I think the best thing
on their phone.
Right.
The best thing was when my friend Ethan did a Shezvasti list, and because a courtesy list doesn't print what's private information, so he printed his courtesy list. There was nothing on there. Because they were all either in hidden deployment or
that is the one thing about Infinity that you have all those kind of cool little specialties that you can I'm here.
and I guess 40K has it with Deep Strike and stuff like that.
Like Gene Stealers can do that. I mean, you can deploy your whole Gene Stealer army.
But that's
not on the board.
But that's in Infinity it's way more common to have stuff like that. I mean, everybody has a hidden lieutenant.
Yeah.
That's just part of the game.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, so Infinity's still going strong. COVID kind of hit them pretty hard. The big thing with them was they dropped Code 1 last year, and so everybody was supposed to get Code 1 and really be kind of playing that rule set out, and kind of it was almost because it is the first step into 4th edition. It is 4th edition.
Yeah,
it's the basic rule set. And then 4th edition is basically the advanced rule set smashed onto it. Nothing changes from Code 1 to 4th edition. Nothing goes backwards, let's say. Everything from normal 4th edition just tacks onto it. So it's a lot better jumping in point. Yeah. Now, I don't like that they weren't able to do at least the main factions in Code 1. I get why they're not doing it. It's a SKU thing. And also it's some armies lose their charm when they don't have these advanced rules, right? So, when nomads don't have access to these big hacking lists, because there's only 2 programs in Code 1 for hacking programs, then nomads kind of fade away. Aleph, it would be very hard to make work in the basic Code 1 because
all that.
Yeah. So, and you could do it. You could still tweak the rules. They're just going to be very generic and basic.
Right.
But I think from a marketing standpoint, because what you're still seeing is in their mind, people walk into a store, they don't know what Infinity is. They see the Code 1 boxes. That's where the store needs to steer them. Hey, look at these 4 factions. That's where you start. You build them out. You go into 4th edition. And then eventually you pick up one of the other 4th edition factions,
Well, and
right?
that's one of the hardest things about getting into tabletop gaming is you don't want to be overwhelmed with choices when you're trying to get into a game.
But what happens in reality is somebody walks into a store, sees the entire model range, falls in love with the faction that's now not in Code 1.
Yeah.
So now how do you get them to...
Well, in a way, that's hard, though, because, the number one rule of most things like that is you want to play what you like.
Yes.
Yeah. And if
Which,
you like how that looks, then you're going to want to play with it.
What a lot of people can do is, I've heard Workhorse tell people, okay, buy into nomads. But what we'll do is when I'm teaching you to play, we'll start with Code 1, but what you'll do is you'll proxy your model you'll use the Yuching profiles.
Yeah.
Right. And then you'll just do proxying
Until it's time.
Until it's time for you to go to N4, then we'll start actually rolling in. Or, and there's been people that have gone in and pretty much made Code 1 versions of those factions. They've pretty much eliminated all the skills out of the profiles and kind of tweaked the points a little bit, because the point system's different from Code 1 to N4. It basically, they kind of move the decimal for a lot of stuff. So it's not nearly as granular. And so there's ways to do it, right? And really the jump from Code 1 to N4 isn't huge. You can still teach somebody to play in N4, but what you're doing a lot of times when you do that, you're ignoring those rules that N4 brings in that Code 1 doesn't. So, and of course, Code 1 introduced the smaller map size for different point values. N4 took that too, and it seems like a lot of games are doing that, right? If you're playing smaller, you're playing on a smaller surface, which
playing faster, playing quicker,
right? You're
getting more games in,
and especially for something like Infinity, which is when you play a 150-point game, now you play it on a 24 by 32.
Okay,
that's what you're playing a 150-point game on.
You could literally play on this table here.
Yeah, up to 300, which is still on the 4 foot by 4 foot, 48 by 48. If you were to play 150 points on 48 by 48, which we used to, we used to do that. The problem is if you're playing the 3-turn limit,
it's hard to get across all that.
If you deploy at normal deployment ranges and stuff, it makes for a really boring game. Because you don't, not only is you don't have as many models crowding, but you need other models' orders.
There wasn't a lot of range at that time.
Yeah, to start pushing. So anyway, that's our rant. Again, thank you guys for joining us this week. We'll come back next week with some more gaming news and theories. Again, you can you're catching this on YouTube. No audio version just yet. We're working on it for those that need a commuter version. But anyway, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.